All right, let's get this stream going. We got about 2 hours before the NFL kicks off for today. Week 7, NFL. We're going to talk some prize picks. We're going to talk some player props. I've got a list of guys that I'm looking at, but I'm going to take your submissions as well. We're going to see what you guys are liking over on prize picks today. So let's go ahead and dig into it. We'll start things off with the quarterback position. I'll probably just go through a couple of props that I'm liking from each player prop category. We'll start things off with passing yards. And one that kind of caught my eye when doing some research here on props.cash. Of course, props.cash here is changing the way that player props are researched. So if you are not using props.cash yet, check out the link in the description of this video. I've got an affiliate link. You can go and sign up for props.cash and get started using their player prop tool today. It'll save you a bunch of time. It'll save you a bunch of effort. And so we'll start things off here with the first one that kind of caught my eye. And you see his name here at the top of the list. And we're talking about Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones over on PrizePicks in terms of his passing yards, he is at 233.5. You can see that on props.cash. He is at 230.5, not 230.5. He's got an 83% hit rate to start the season off. So that means 83% of the time he is covering 230.5 passing yards. So let's go ahead and we'll click into Daniel Jones's name over on the left-hand side here on props.cash. You can filter this out. Right now, we got all games, but if we wanted to just look at Carolina and the New York Giants, we can do that. So we're going to click on Daniel Jones here and take a closer look at this. Now, his line is at 228.5 here on props.cash, but the great thing about this tool is that it's got a slider here for alternate player props. So if you're playing on a site like PrizePicks, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, because right now they're doing 100% instant deposit match on your first deposit up to $100. All you have to do is use promo code Curry, as you can see on the banners here. But if you're playing on a site like PrizePicks where they offer an alternate player prop, in other words, 233.5, that might be a custom number only available on PrizePicks and nowhere else. You can go ahead and use this little slider here, change this from 228.5 up to 233.5. So you can see we move this slider, the little bar here goes up and down, and then the bar graph changes colors from red to green. Green obviously meaning good, meaning he's hitting this player prop. Red meaning he is not covering the player prop. So for 233.5, which is where he's at on PrizePicks, you can see that he still maintains that hit rate of 83%. So a fantastic hit rate. Not to mention, in his last 5 games, he's averaging 251.4 passing yards per game, which puts him well over 233.5. Now, my favorite predictive tool out there, if you're looking for a good projection site or projections tool, I recommend the Blitz by Derek Carty. Derek Carty killing the game, obviously most well known probably for the bat, his baseball projections for MLB, but he is now in the NFL game, well has been in the NFL game for a while now. So his projection tool, the Blitz, is available on Roto Grinders. There will be a link down in the description of this video if you want to check that out. But we're going to refer to Daniel Jones, his passing yard prop today, and kind of see where they like him over on the Blitz. And we can do that by filtering out Carolina and New York Giants. We'll get to it a little quicker. And based on what I'm seeing here on the passing yards for Daniel Jones, he's projected for about 254 passing yards. So that obviously gives him about a 21-yard cushion versus this 233.5 number. So he's got a good hit rate. He's hit 5 out of 6 games so far this season, 83%. He's projected to go over 233.5 passing yards. So that's looking good. But we could take things a step further here, and we could take a look at how things stack up here in terms of matchup and stuff like that. So if we scroll down a little bit more, you can see how many offensive snaps that he gets per game. You can see the amount of passing attempts that he gets per game, pass percentage versus run percentage for the New York Giants. So lots of really good features and tools here. All the injuries that you should consider here for both teams, and there is a long list of them. All of that is available as well. Now, let's say you wanted to know if Daniel Jones plays better on turf or on grass. They have that option available as well. You can also change how he plays in different split situations, whether it be at home or away. Or you want to just look at how he's done versus Carolina. In this case, we don't have anything to look at from this season or last season, but you could do that as well with props.cash. So my point being, based on the projections, based on the hit rate, based on what he's done so far this season in terms of his last 5 games and his average, it's looking like Daniel Jones going over this player prop could be a strong way to go. So that's just one option to consider. Obviously, do some more research. We're just doing surface level research here, and you should always dig a little bit deeper when you're doing your player prop research. Props.cash, great site to help you do that. So that's the first one from the passing yards prop. Now, another one that kind of stood out to me was Mr. Sam Darnold. Now, Sam Darnold, a little bit lower in terms of the hit rate. So you could see that we're going right back to this game here. Sam Darnold at 238.5, and that number hasn't moved. That seems kind of low to me for Sam Darnold. Obviously, he's been struggling a little bit lately. If you open up his little player card here on PrizePicks, you got to get an idea how well he's been doing or not been doing in his last couple of games. But he started the season off strong against New Orleans, over 300 yards, another 300-plus yard game, and another one against Dallas. So the first 3 games, over 300 yards, and then he falls back down to earth against a tough Philadelphia Eagles defense, 177, and then Minnesota, just 207 passing yards in that one. So let's go ahead and click into Sam Darnold here, because he was another one from this game that kind of caught my eye here. So at 232.5, that's not what he's at on PrizePicks, obviously. So we're going to use the slider, the alternate line slider. We're going to move that sucker up. And now you could see that he's still at 67%, a 4 out of 6 hit rate. His average is really good too, 258.8, so nearly 260 passing yards per game. As we already looked at, a lot of that was kind of front loaded from the first 3 games of the season where he topped 300 yards in 3 straight. But nonetheless, a strong average. And according to the Blitz, let's go take a look at Sam Darnold and where he's projected in terms of passing yards. They've got him at 264 passing yards. So 264 passing yards versus 238.5. To me, that provides a ton of value. There's a big edge there, in fact. So that is definitely one to consider. The New York Giants, not a super strong, super stingy defense typically. So this is another one that kind of caught my eye, a potentially good way to go. I mean, you could see where the New York Giants rank against the pass in terms of yards per game rank. They rank 22nd, not very good. One of the worst. They're allowing over 264 passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. So very helpful, insightful information there. That's leading me to want to go over on Sam Darnold's passing yard prop. So just happens to be that these guys are facing each other, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, and both of their passing yard props looking pretty doggone juicy. So a couple of them to consider. What is good, Taylor Genghis? Thank you so much for tuning in, Mr. Tim Johnson. Hey, if you guys have any questions, any props that you need a little bit further research, a little bit further digging into, let me know. And I will use the tools at my disposal to assist and help in any way that I can. Appreciate you guys popping in though and checking out the stream. So with those quarterback props out of the way, let's move over to the running back position. We'll take a look at some rushing yard props. And we'll head back over to props.cash. This is kind of where I always start things off, and that's typically with the trends for various positions, various props. So you can do that here by dropping down, clicking the running back position, and now you get all of the player prop trends for the running back rushing yards. Now, if you didn't want to look at rushing yards, you could change that to long rush or rushing attempts. But in this case, those props are not offered on PrizePicks, so we're going to focus just on the rushing yard prop for right now. And so you could see that one guy that stands out here at the top of the list is Joe Mixon, who's at 59.5. Let's see what his number is at here on PrizePicks. So to do that, we'll click the rushing yards category. We will scroll down the line here, find Joe Mixon, who's been a little bit banged up this season. A little bit banged up, and he's not, going against an easy or soft defense. Typically, Baltimore pretty tough against really the opposing offense, whether it be the quarterback, the running back, you name it. But in this case, Joe Mixon is a little bit higher than where they have him at on props.cash. So at 60.5 rushing yards, we're going to need to dig in a little bit deeper here, see if this Joe Mixon prop is a good one or not. So we have switched things over to the running back position. We're going to go down to Cincy versus Baltimore. Joe Mixon, 59.5. Let's slide him up. Let's bump him up to where he's at on PrizePicks so we get a little one-to-one and apples-to-apples comparison here. We want to make sure that we're looking at the right lines. PrizePicks, always a little different than some of your sports books out there, so we got to make sure we have everything dialed in just the way it should be. So Joe Mixon, 60.5. You can see that he's got a 5 out of 6 hit rate. That's an 83% cover rate to start the season, which is fantastic. That's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for high hit rates, high success rate. How likely is it that this guy is going to cover his player prop if we are leaning toward the over? Now, overs may not always be the best way to go. Sometimes taking the under is the way to go. There's value there sometimes taking the under. I think most of these sports books know that guys like you and me, girls like you, not me, we like to take the overs. It's just more fun to root for the overs than it is for the unders. So they know that, and I think that they usually make their lines accordingly. So let's look at Joe Mixon, and then we'll pop back over to chat. I see some action, some folks starting to roll in here, and so we'll take some of those questions. See a lot of my Discord members in the chat. If you're not in Discord, if you're not on Patreon yet, I am on Patreon. You can support all my work over on Patreon. It's $20 a month, gets you access to a private little group where we all talk different sports. Little plug on that. So link down in the description if you're interested in any of that Patreon stuff. We got that going on. So shout out to all of my Discord members, my Patreon members in there. Let's get back to this Joe Mixon prop, 60.5. You can see the hit rate's fantastic. Let's scroll on down here and take a look at how Baltimore stacks up against the run. You can see that in terms of Baltimore's defensive stats this season, rushing yards per game, they're giving up over 82 rushing yards per game. Now, the rushing yards per game rank is actually 3, so they're actually kind of stout. They're actually kind of tough against the run here. So this could be one where it could be a little tricky. It looks pretty good here out on the surface, but could it be a trap? Could it be a trap? We know Baltimore's tough, but I don't know. Let's find out. We're going to go over to the blitz. We're going to take a look at his projected rushing yards. So to do that, I'm going to click over here. I keep all that stuff off screen. They don't want me giving out all the goods on the blitz. So you know how it goes, So we're going to pull up Joe Mixon here, scroll over to where his rushing yards are and take a look and see what his projected rushing yards are. Now the blitz, it updates all throughout the day, and it just updated actually within the last 30 minutes. And as of the latest update, Joe Mixon is at 75 rushing yards, which puts him over by about 14 to 15 rushing yards. So things are looking good here. It's got a high success rate of hitting. The projections are looking very juicy. On top of that, his average for the season is 70.6 rushing yards in his last 5. Over the course of the season, he's at 80 rushing yards per game. So there's a lot to like about this player prop. And I could see why a lot of people will probably be on Joe Mixon and these rushing yards today. Makes a lot of sense. So let's pop over to chat. Let's see what chat's got going on here. Got some comments, some questions. Mr. Tim says, do you like... What does that say? Let me pull this out here. That's weird. That ain't quite working. Technical difficulties. Please stand by. Lamar over 20 completions. Lamar Jackson over 20 completions. Well, let's take a look at it, Tim. We will do this together. So back to props.cash we go. We'll flip this from running back to quarterback. Once this loads up here, we can click Lamar Jackson's name. We could go to his completions and his line on PrizePicks. Let's go take a look and see where that's at. not passing yards, passing completions. He's at 19.5, so he's already plugged in here on props.cash at 19.5. And you can see over his last 5, 22.4 completed passes per game. But if you look over the course of the season here, according to these lovely bar graphs, the hit rate hasn't been all that for Lamar Jackson. Just 2 out of 6 games, a 33% hit rate. So we're going to go back over to the blitz and take a look at Lamar Jackson and his passing completions. Let's see where they have him projected. I don't just rely on historical data like props.cash gives you access to. I also rely a little bit on some projections. So according to the blitz, they've got Lamar Jackson at 18.4 completed passes, which would put him under and seems to correlate with this poor hit rate of just 33% on the season. Now, maybe it'll give us a little bit more information in terms of passing completions allowed by Cincinnati per game. I don't know. I haven't looked. Let's see if we get that with props.cash. They give you passing yards per game rank, rushing yards per game rank. I'm not seeing anything for pass completions allowed. So you would have to most likely refer to something like, I don't know, StatMuse is a good one. If you don't go to StatMuse, Pro Football Reference, another free site, another free resource for you to check out. But I'm not seeing any type of, pass completions allowed by the Cincinnati Bengals, unfortunately, with props.cash. But to answer your question, it looks like he's projected to go under right around 18 completed passes. And I would say that based on what we're seeing here so far this season, that going under on his completed passes could be a way to go. So not terrible. Charles, thank you for the question. Miles Sanders under 62.5 rushing yards. Of course, Philadelphia facing the Las Vegas Raiders today. So Miles Sanders at 62.5 rushing yards. Let's take a look. Let's dig in a little bit deeper here. That's what I want this show to be about. What I want this live stream to be about. I want to be able to help you guys out, make those tough decisions right before lock in, a few entries, and hopefully we land on a little bit of dollar bills, y'all. So we're going to switch things over to the running back position. Let's go find the Philadelphia Las Vegas game, and let's go find, well, they don't have Miles Sanders in here. Props.cash. Where's Miles Sanders at? Okay, so let's use PrizePicks in this case. 62.5 rushing yards. Here's his game log. So thank God for PrizePicks and them adding this feature of game logs. So we go back to the first game of the season, 55 rushing yards. That puts him under. 27, well under. 13, well under. 45, well under. And 56 under. So this guy is 0 for his last 5 in terms of covering 62.5 rushing yards. So case could be made here for going under on Miles Sanders' rushing yard prop. Let's head over to the blitz. I will pull up his projections and we'll take a look and see where he's projected to land in terms of rushing yards today. Because you might have found a little diamond in the rough here. You might have found yourself a little gem with Miles Sanders in this rushing yard prop, taking the under. And that's why we do this, because when we get more people involved, we get more information coming in, we can kind of all benefit from it, right? So I appreciate you dropping in the question about Miles Sanders. Now, interesting enough, he is actually projected for 63 rushing yards, 0.5 more rushing yards than where he's projected at on PrizePicks today. So do you ride with the trends? 5 games showing him going under 62.5 rushing yards, or do you ride with the projections? The blitz has pretty sharp projections, but they have him projected right around the 62.5, 63 rushing yard prop. So is it a lock? Oh, we know there's no such thing as locks, but in this case, that might be one I fade. That might be one I fade. What we can do, though, we don't have Miles Sanders on props.cash, but what we could do is we could click on Kenneth Gainwell and we could use this information to help us get a better read on Las Vegas in terms of how they rank in terms of rushing yards and stuff like that. So Las Vegas team defensive stats, you can see their rushing yards per game rank 25th. Not very good against opposing running backs. On top of that, they're allowing over 130 rushing yards per game. So I could see why Miles Sanders is at 63 and projected to go over 62.5 according to the blitz. It's because the Raiders suck. They suck against running backs. They give up a ton of rushing yards per game. So 130.7 rushing yards per game. Miles Sanders is the lead back. Kenneth Gainwell, yeah, he gets involved, but it's mostly the Miles Sanders show when the run game is involved here. So I don't know. That's a tough one. Tough one there, Mr. Charles. It might be a fade for me when it's not a clear-cut thing. I don't know. Timeout Sports Podcast. Thank you for the question. We got Joe Mixon over receiving yards. So we talked about Joe Mixon's rushing yards being what looks like a good spot. Now, we've got a question about Joe Mixon's receiving yards. And I'll be frank, I haven't really looked at Joe Mixon's receiving yards, so we're going to do that right now. He is their do everything running back. He's one of the very few running backs out there that are bell cows, that are not involved in any type of, running back by committee situation. He's not really sharing the backfield with anyone in Cincinnati. This is Joe Mixon's backfield. And so at 14.5 receiving yards, let's go find him here on props.cash and start digging into this player prop. And hopefully we can land on a definitive answer for these Joe Mixon receiving yards for our friend Timeout Sports Podcast. So let's do it. So we got Joe Mixon pulled up, and up at the top here on props.cash, you just click receiving yards, and we'll scroll back up here. Now it's pretty ugly. Even though he's at 16.5, let's slide him down to 14.5, and that changes things a little bit. But at 14.5, you can see he hasn't covered very well so far this season. Just a 2 out of 6 hit rate. That's a 33% completion, we'll call it. Not doing very good. You'd like to see him more involved in the passing game. We've got to keep in mind that Joe Mixon was a little bit beat up, and I think he missed one of these games here. But in his last game, which was against Detroit, 59 receiving yards. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come, if you're looking to take the over here on Joe Mixon's receiving yards. Let's scroll down a little bit. Let's look at Baltimore and see how they stack up against opposing running backs in terms of receiving yards allowed. Maybe we can get a little bit more information. So it doesn't show us specifically how many receiving yards are allowed by Baltimore per game. But they do suck against the pass in general. 26th ranked in the league in terms of yards per game is Baltimore's defense. Now, I'm going to go to one of those sites that I mentioned before, Pro Football Reference. Let me refresh that so we make sure we have all the latest up-to-date stuff. Now, what I like about this site is they have kind of a 2021 defense versus, and then you plug in whatever position. In this case, we're looking at running backs. Now, what I do is I toggle per game stats, and then I go to the receiving yards option. So we're looking at running backs, per game stats, receiving yards, and we're going to go to the Baltimore Ravens and check it out. 67.2 receiving yards per game allowed to opposing running backs. That's number 2. They're the second worst or second most giving, most friendly to receiving yards to running backs. So I think a case could be made here for Joe Mixon going over 14.5 receiving yards. I think there's a very strong possibility that he could get that based on what I'm seeing here so far. So last but not least, let's top this off with a quick little projection glimpse at the projections here on the Blitz by Derek Carty. We're going to move things over and look at the receiving yards. He is projected for 23 receiving yards, if that makes you feel any better. 23 receiving yards for Joe Mixon versus 14.5 here on PrizePicks. It's a pretty good edge, pretty good difference in projection. So hopefully that answers your question on Joe Mixon and those receiving yards. All right, Charles, back at it again. Charles, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to take someone else's question because you already got your turn. So we're gonna skip that one. We're gonna get back to that one in just a minute. Liam says hello to Liam. Anthony, thank you for tuning in, buddy. Appreciate it. You're a long-time supporter of me, my work, my channel, so I appreciate you. Travis, what's up? Good morning to you. Let's see what we got here. Cole Commett in all caps. What about Cole Commett? What are we thinking on Cole Commett? Are we talking about his fantasy points? Are we talking about his receiving yards? He is projected to go over his receiving yards prop. I think he was at 30.5. We know the Bucs aren't very good about in terms of stopping opposing tight ends, so Cole Commett could be a thing. Antonio Gibson under rushing yards. Smooth criminal entertainment. Let's take a look at some Antonio Gibson under rushing yards. I think his number was kind of low, and I was actually leaning toward the over on Antonio Gibson rushing yards, but let's dig into it. He's at 49.5 rushing yards over on PrizePicks. So let's head over to props.cash. We're going to filter this out here. Let's go Washington, Green Bay, Antonio Gibson. Switch this over to rushing yards and scroll on down here. Let's make sure our line is set properly. He is at 48.5, so let's bump him up 1 yard to make sure we are apples to apples. And so you see at 49.5 rushing yards, he has a 67% success rate in covering this prop. So at 49.5, you would want to initially lean toward the over. He's averaging over 53 rushing yards per game in his last 5. And for the course of the season, 59.5 rushing yards per game. In terms of his line at 48.5, you can see that it's even here. As far as the over-under on various sports books and stuff, not really seeing any juice, any action one way or the other on this 48.5 rushing yard prop. But at 49.5, let's scroll on down here. Let's take a look at how Green Bay does against the run. They rank 13th in terms of rushing yards per game rank. They're allowing over 108.5 rushing yards per game. So things are looking kind of good here for Antonio Gibson. Not bad. Of course, he's been beat up for the last few games. He's dealing with that shin bruise or shin injury. So not sure what to make of that. Is he 100%? I don't know. I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. But let's take a look at the blitz real quick. We'll check out Antonio Gibson's projections real quick, and then we'll move on to the next question. And Antonio Gibson, according to the blitz by Derek Carty, my number one projection tool here, he's projected for 53 rushing yards. So narrow margin, not a whole lot of overhead there, not a whole lot of ceiling there for Antonio Gibson and these rushing yards, but it could go either way. This is going to be one of those ones that's too close for my comfort level, so I'll probably fade this one, but gun to head, I'm probably leaning over on Antonio Gibson. Tim Johnson says, Taylor, we went to middle school together. Ooh, interesting. I wonder what middle school that was, because Taylor was actually in middle school down here in Florida at McLean, and that's where I went. So maybe if you were here in Florida and went to McLean, we went to the same middle school together too. All right, Miles Faison asks, Aaron Rodgers over passing yards. Aaron Rodgers over passing yards. Of course, facing the Washington football team defense today. Let's go take a look at where Aaron Rodgers is at. He's at 265.5 passing yards. Now, if memory serves me correct, Aaron Rodgers hasn't had a very high hit rate in terms of covering this 265.5 passing yards prop. So let's move this over from running back to quarterback. Click in on Aaron Rodgers. We're going to have to shift his lineup because 63.5 is not quite right. So he's at 65.5. Let's dial it in. This can be a little tricky sometimes. There we go. 65.5. So as I mentioned, he hasn't had a very good success rate in terms of covering this player prop. He is 1 for 6, in fact, just a 17% hit rate, averaging 260.6 passing yards per game. And over the course of the season, he's averaging under 240 passing yards per game. So I could see why initially you'd feel like Aaron Rodgers, actually you said over. Well, this looks like an underplay to me. Let's scroll down. Let's see how Washington does in terms of passing yards allowed per game. Well, I'll be damned. 32. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that. They are the worst defense in the league in terms of passing yards allowed per game. So could this be a game where Aaron Rodgers gets right? Can he break out of this little slump in terms of covering this 265.5 passing yard prop against the worst pass defense in the NFL? This could be one of those games. They are giving up over 309 passing yards per game, folks. Over 309 passing yards per game. Let's take a look at something else that the Blitz offers. They have something called game level factors. These game level factors help in terms of kind of creating a game script, how the game might go according to the Blitz. That's basically what it's good for. So let's go to Green Bay. They are projected for 27.5 total team points. The Washington football team projected for 19.5 points. So pretty big in terms of spread there. Pretty big difference. 8-point spread. The game script, according to the Blitz, for Green Bay is going to be an extreme run game script. Not good news if you're looking to take the over on Aaron Rodgers' passing yard prop. But what you can possibly hope for here, if you do want to lean toward the over on Aaron Rodgers, is maybe he racks up those passing yards earlier in the game. Maybe by the third quarter, he's hit this prop, and then they turn things over to Aaron Jones. They turn things over to A.J. Dillon and start to chew up some clock. Maybe they got a lead and they start playing from ahead. But you got to hope that Aaron Rodgers gets these passing yards in early. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. The pace for the Green Bay Packers is slow, according to the Blitz. And the game pace overall for these two teams ends up being neutral. So, I don't know. This is another one of those props where I'm feeling a little unsure about it. His hit rate sucks, but the matchup is juicy as you could possibly ask for in terms of a passing yards prop for anyone. So there you have it for Aaron Rodgers. Back up to Charles. He had a second question in that we didn't get a chance to hit on. He says, Henry under 3 receptions. Charles, I'm going to ask the question. Is that Derrick Henry? Is that Hunter Henry? Is that Henry Ruggs? I don't know exactly what Henry you're talking about, but let's go and take a look at some of the Henrys that he might be talking about over here on PrizePicks. We got Derrick Henry at 3 receptions. He's probably talking about Derrick Henry. But Hunter Henry's at 3.5 receptions. Maybe he's talking about Hunter Henry. And Henry Ruggs, he's at 3 receptions. So if you are still around, Charles, let me know. If you're talking about Hunter Henry, Derrick Henry, Henry Ruggs, there's more than one Henry. Anyway, till we get some more questions, let's go back to a couple of the other plays that kind of were sticking out to me. So we'll head back to props.cash. We'll look at some of the other rushing yards props. I gave you Joe Mixon. He's looking like a good potential over play. Aaron Jones is also up here at a pretty high hit rate. Let's take a look at him. He's at 66.5 rushing yards. We already talked about Green Bay. This is projecting to be an extreme run game script for the Green Bay Packers. So they're expecting Green Bay to build a lead probably, according to the Blitz, turn around, hand the ball off to Aaron Jones and let him run wild. So 66.5 rushing yards is where he is at according to props.cash. We will go to the rushing yard section here. He is also at 66.5 according to PrizePicks. Let's change this from all games to just the Washington and Green Bay game. Now it's 66.5 rushing yards. Aaron Jones has hit this prop 67% of the time. That's good for 4 out of 6. That's a very high hit rate. The games that he didn't hit was against New Orleans. Tough rush defense. Of course, we know Green Bay in general, they just struggled in week 1 against New Orleans. That was an ugly game for all the Green Bay Packers, not just Aaron Jones. And then Pittsburgh, who historically, typically over the last couple of seasons, has a pretty tough defense, struggled to get there in that game. So I kind of throw that New Orleans game out the window. If you do throw that one out the window like I do, he's actually got like a 4 out of 5 hit rate here and 48 yards. Not a terrible day against a pretty tough defense. So Aaron Jones, 66.5 rushing yards. He's averaging over 75 rushing yards per game over his last 5. Over the course of the season, though, just 64.2, so slightly under 66.5, but not terrible. Not terrible. That's close enough for me. Horseshoes and hand grenades. Close enough. So let's scroll down here and take a look at Washington in terms of how they stack up against the run. They're 19th ranked. They're giving up over 113 rushing yards per game, which is a pretty big number here. So if Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers can build a lead, and then they could turn things over to their run game, I think I do like Aaron Jones going over 66.5 rushing yards today. I think I do like that. Let's check his projection out over on the Blitz, and we will just verify that. They've got him at 61 rushing yards. So 61 versus 66.5. It's going to be pretty close in terms of if this prop hits or not. We got some Week 7 inactives rolling in here. Devonte Parker, Sterling Shepard, both out. So those are probably the biggest ones. If you're worried about Antonio Gibson, worry no more. He is expected to play. Julio Jones also expected to play for Tennessee. So Just some of the big names that are in and out for today. So Aaron Jones, 66.5 rushing yards. I like it. I know he's not projected to go over by the blitz, but this could be a situation again where the extreme run game script benefits Aaron Jones, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it benefits his backfield mate A.J. Dillon, and maybe he's the guy that ends up going over. But I don't mind the Green Bay running back situation today against Washington. Washington in general, just not a very good defense against the pass, against the run, against anything really. So, all right, let's go back to the trends here and see what we've got for the wide receiver position. So we'll click this. This will actually be wide receivers and tight ends, so we can kind of take a look at both. Now they got Cordero Patterson at 38.5. I don't know that that I want to look at 38.5. Why did I stop doing basketball? Why would you think that? Why would you think that I stopped doing basketball? I mean, I got to be real though. NFL versus basketball versus NBA. I mean, we got to go NFL, right? What do you think, Rashawn? You let me know. I just dropped a basketball video the other night, though. I definitely haven't stopped doing basketball, but I could do more basketball. Is that what you're saying? You want more basketball out of me? I can do more basketball for you. Actually, I do plan on doing more basketball for you, so be on the lookout for that. I got you, Rashawn. Don't worry. Don't worry. Charles, you were talking Derrick Henry receptions. Perfect, bro. Perfect. Let's go ahead and look at those receptions for King Henry of the Tennessee Titans. They're taking on Kansas City. This is going to be a very interesting game. I love both too, Rashawn. I rock with both heavy. It's all NFL, all NBA for me, and I will try to get you more NBA content. So I appreciate that comment. That lets me know what it is you're looking for. If you want more NBA, I can do more NBA. We'll do a couple NBAs and a couple of NFLs per week. How about that? We'll try to keep it balanced, keep it even Steven for you. But for me personally, NFL a little bit better than NBA, or at least that's what I'm interested in. But I'm gonna look out for you though. I'm gonna look out for you. All right, Derrick Henry, 3 receptions. Let's get into it. We've got clarification from Charles in chat. Thank you so much. Let's switch this up here. We're going to the Kansas City versus Tennessee game, and we're going to change this to running back. Props.cash, man. If you guys want to check it out, I'm telling you, it's got most of what you're looking for in terms of player prop research. Link down in the description of this video if you want to check it out. There's an affiliate link in there. You could use my link to get signed up. Thank you in advance if you do end up trying to check out props.cash. Highly recommend it. As you can see, it makes your researching your player props way easier. So here we go. Derrick Henry receptions. He's at 2.5 on props.cash. PrizePicks, however, has bumped him up to an even number or odd, but whatever, a rounded off number of 3. So they've got him going for 3 receptions. So once we move him up to 3, a lot changes here on his bar graph. Now for the season, he's averaging 2.7 receptions per game. Obviously 2.7 closer to 3 than it is to 2. So, you know, the lean would be going over on this 3 reception prop. Maybe it pushes. There's a good chance it probably does, which is why I don't like playing props that are rounded off. Props without the hook. If you don't know what the hook is, that's that 0.5 that you see after a lot of props. I typically stay away from those props because I don't want to push. I want a decisive victory. I either want to win or I want to lose. I don't want to push. So in this case, he's averaging a little bit under 3 receptions per game. His last 5, 2.6 receptions per game. You can see over the course of the season here, kind of ugly. We want to see more green in this graph than gray and red, right? So it's not looking great here for Derrick Henry so far. If we scroll down here, we can take a look at how Kansas City does against the pass. They don't really show us how many receptions per game that they allow to running backs, but that's where a site like Pro Football Reference can be of help. So if we go to receiving and we go to receptions, we're looking at the running back category, obviously, and we go down to Kansas City, you could see that they allow 6.5 receptions per game on average to opposing running backs. That is the 6th most giving, 6th most generous defense in terms of receptions allowed to running back per game. So that's something to consider. This could be a situation where Tennessee maybe falls behind to Kansas City, although I will say Kansas City is a little bit beat up. Maybe we don't see the high-powered Kansas City Chiefs offense that we're normally used to seeing. So in any case, if Kansas City does get out in front here and Tennessee has to turn to a more pass-heavy game script, then Derrick Henry could definitely haul in at least 3 balls. Now, can he haul in 4? According to what we've seen so far this season, it's asking a lot out of King Henry. But I'll wrap this up for you, this prop up for you, by looking at the projected receptions for Derrick Henry, just to kind of put the cherry on top, and we'll move on to the next one. According to the Blitz, they have him being targeted 2.6 times today. And of those 2.6 targets, he's projected to haul in 2.1 of them. So closer to 2 than 3, meaning I probably would fade this prop. I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't feel good about it. That's just me. That's just me. Hope that helps you out, though. Keep both of them. Jay Swervo says keep both of them. Keep both of what? Basketball and football? Is that what you're talking about? Because I definitely will. And I plan on it. I'm going to get more basketball out there. We're just getting started. NBA season just started, gang. I'm going to get more basketball out there for you. Ethan, I have not overlooked you, my friend. Let's talk about those Zach Ertz over receiving. Now, Zach Ertz obviously getting ready to play his first game for the Arizona Cardinals as a longtime 20-plus year Philadelphia Eagle fan. One of my favorites, Zach Ertz, got traded, in case you've been living under a rock and you didn't know. He's no longer with the Eagles. He was traded to the Cardinals and is set to make his Cardinals debut. So you've got Zach Ertz over receiving. When you say Zach Ertz over receiving, there's a lot of different ways we could go here. Are we talking about Zach Ertz over receiving yards? Because Zach Ertz over receiving yards, I don't know. You know, this is a whole new offense, whole new situation for Zach Ertz here. We don't know how things are going to be divvied up. Obviously, there's a lot of different weapons there in that Cardinals offense. They've got Chase Edmonds coming out of the backfield. He's very involved in the passing game. They've got D-Hop out there on the outside, Christian Kirk, Rondell Moore. AJ Green's having a little bit of a resurgence this season. So, I mean, you know, how much is left over for Zach Ertz to really eat at that Arizona Cardinals table? That's the question, right? So let's see if we can find Zach Ertz here on PrizePicks. I'm guessing that you're talking about his receiving yards. He's going against Houston. Jay Swervo, all my brothers watch you. I don't know if you mean like blood brothers or just like brothers. But thank you for watching, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're winning some money, brother. I'm glad you're winning some money. That's what we try to do. We try to be helpful. We try to help people win money, land on some better picks. These over and unders, man, they could be hard. They could be hard. There's no doubt about it. But Zach Ertz at 25.5 receiving yards. Let's go take a look and see. We're going to have to use, you know, some of the stats here that we've got so far for the Philadelphia Eagles. Because, you know, he hasn't played a game yet for Arizona. So we don't have a whole lot to rely on in terms of what he's going to do or what he has done with the Arizona Cardinals. It's a whole new situation. Does he play a full complement of snaps? That's another question. I mean, maybe he comes in and plays a limited amount of snaps. Does he know the playbook? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks around Zach Ertz in this debut for the Cardinals. So 25.5 receiving yards here on props.cash. You could see that based on the games that we do have. These are all obviously with the Eagles. He's averaged 31 receiving yards per game. Completely different team, completely different offense. Got to keep that in mind here. For the season, 31.5 receiving yards per game. So let's scroll down here. Let's take a look at, well, see, they've got Las Vegas in here. And we know that Zach Ertz is a Cardinal now. And the Cardinals are definitely facing Houston. They're not facing Las Vegas. Let's use Pro Football Reference in this case. You know, just another tool in my tool belt here, profootballreference.com, free site, free for you to go use. We're going to look at the tight end position. We're going to click on the yards category here and look at the per game averages in terms of how many yards per game that the Houston Texans give up to the tight end position. And it's looking pretty good, guys. 66.2 receiving yards per game allowed through 6 games by the Houston Texans. So could Zach Ertz come out and have a strong debut? I mean, yeah, I guess he could. We don't know though, right? That's the big question mark around this, is if Zach Ertz will come in, if he'll make an immediate impact, or are they going to ease him into things? Maybe they ease him in. And then on top of that, all the other weapons in Arizona, how is that going to impact Zach Ertz? I'm going to go to the blitz. I'm going to look up a projection here for Zach Ertz and these receiving yards and kind of put a cap on this particular player prop. If it makes you feel any better about going over on Zach Ertz and his 25.5 receiving yards, I've got him projected, according to the blitz, 29 receiving yards. Not a big edge, not a big gap there in where he's at on PrizePicks versus where he's at on the blitz projection system, but there you go, Zach Ertz. Hopefully that helps you out there, Ethan. Appreciate you dropping that little nugget into the chat. Jay Swervo, Arizona quarterback Kyler Murray is under 23 fantasy score. 80% confident, New England. Mac Jones under 17 fantasy, 80% confident. Okay, I see what you're doing. You're dropping a few plays in here. I got you. So we're looking at Kyler Murray's fantasy points. That's interesting because I don't talk about fantasy points a whole lot here. PrizePicks, they kind of use a proprietary fantasy points projection. They're kind of like DraftKings. The difference between PrizePicks fantasy points and DraftKings fantasy points, in case you didn't know, DraftKings gives you a 3-point bonus for when a player goes over 100 rushing yards, 100 receiving yards, or over 300 passing yards. PrizePicks doesn't give you that bonus. So that is the big difference. So it's not exactly one-to-one. So when you go to a site that offers projections, DraftKings projections, just know that those DraftKings projections could be a little bit different than what you're going to see on PrizePicks. But let's go look at Kyler Murray real quick, because he brings up a pretty good point. Kyler Murray, juicy matchup here against Houston. In case you didn't know, PrizePicks, they offer both single stat player props and fantasy score. So in this case, my friend would like to talk about Kyler Murray's fantasy points. So I can't wait till they let you filter this out and sort by position. But for now, we have to scroll, get our scroll on. So let's open this up. You could see in his last 5 here on PrizePicks, going back to the first game, opening game against the Minnesota Vikings, he drops 35 fantasy points. He comes back with nearly 21 fantasy points against Jacksonville. That's an under. 22.6 against the Rams. That puts him slightly under. 11.6 against San Francisco. That's a big under. And then finally, last game versus the Cleveland Browns, 21.7 fantasy points. That puts him under. So guys, he's only covered today's 23 fantasy point prop one time, and it was a long time ago, all the way back in week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings. So he's 1 for 5 in covering 23 fantasy points. Do you feel good about that? I don't know. That's a tough one. Let's take a look at his projections over on the Blitz today and see if, they like the over or the under here. Now, good news for those who are looking to take the over on Kyler Murray's fantasy points. He's actually projected for 26.7 fantasy points according to the Blitz. You can check out the Blitz on Roto Grinders. Derek Carty, the mind behind the Blitz and the bat. What the heck just happened, man? They must have just updated the board. There we go. But anyway, they've got him projected for over 26 fantasy points, almost 27 fantasy points. So you're talking about a 3 to 4 point difference, fantasy point difference versus where he's at on PrizePicks. So they're expecting a big game, they meaning the Blitz, from Kyler Murray against this Houston Texans defense. So interesting, very, very interesting. That could be a good way to go, man. Appreciate you dropping that one into the chat. If you guys have any questions, any props that you're looking at, I'll do this for a few more minutes here, and then I'll probably get off and lock in a few different player props and get some of my entries locked in for the day. But can you check Robbie Anderson's Blitz projection, please? That is DeAndre Swift season in the chat. What up, DeAndre Swift? Man, I wish you were the real DeAndre Swift. I'd like to talk to an NFL player like DeAndre Swift. I actually got a DeAndre Swift rookie card. I'm a big believer in DeAndre Swift. Let's take a look at Robbie Anderson's. Are we talking about fantasy points projections or receiving yards projections? What is it that you want me to look into? I'll do it for you. Ain't no thing but a chicken wing. Let me know what you need, though, buddy. Let me know what you need. Let's go over and click on that Carolina-New York Giants game, though. We will filter the positions out. We'll look at just wide receiver. If you're talking Robbie Anderson's fantasy points, according to the DraftKings projections provided by the Blitz, 13.2 fantasy points. So I don't know if you're referring to his fantasy points projection or... Okay, cool. Fantasy points. Yeah. So he's at 13.2. 13.2 fantasy points. Where is he at on PrizePicks? Let's go find him. Robbie Anderson struggles, or has struggled so far this season. You could see, guys, 6.8 fantasy points against New Orleans, 1.8 against Houston. That's about as soft as a matchup as you could ask for against the Houston Texans. 9.9 against Dallas, 5 against Philly, 10.1 against Minnesota. So what is it about Robbie Anderson that's got you curious? That's what I want to know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. You know something that we don't know? DeAndre Swift season? Because according to what I'm looking at here, I wouldn't touch Robbie Anderson anything right now because he's just been like super inconsistent. Like he's never went over 11 fantasy points, but maybe he does today. Maybe today's the first time. Sub to Props.cash. Will that site help with PrizePicks? Will it help with PrizePicks? Oh my God, yes. That's what we're talking about today, baby. We're talking PrizePicks and Props.cash all day. Well, not all day, for a little bit longer. But yes, it will help you with any single stat player prop research, whether you play on PrizePicks or somewhere else. If you're taking overs and unders on single stat player props, passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, you name it. Yes, Props.cash can help. Absolutely. Let's look at Jalen Waddle, because we haven't talked about any Miami Dolphins yet today. So Jalen Waddle over 12 fantasy points. And I think I did mention earlier that Devonte Parker was listed as out for Miami. So with Devonte Parker out, Jalen Waddle could be an option. Another option, obviously, Mike Gesicki, man. That guy's been killing it. He's more of a wide receiver than he is a tight end. So that's another option for you to look at. If you're not feeling Jalen Waddle, then Mike Gesicki is another guy that you should definitely take a look at with the aforementioned Devonte Parker out. But Jalen Waddle at 12 fantasy score. Let's open up his game logs real quick. How many times has he covered 12 fantasy points, you ask? Well, twice. Back on September 26th against the Las Vegas Raiders, 16.8, and a huge game against the pitiful Jacksonville Jaguars secondary, dropping 29 fantasy points. So he's covered in just 2 out of 5 games. I will give you his projection real quick, and then we'll move on from Jalen Waddle here. So let's go back to the Blitz, and we're going to look at the DraftKings projections, because DraftKings is most similar to PrizePicks. Not exactly, but most similar. And Jalen Waddle, I've got him at 14.7 fantasy points. 14.7 fantasy points. Remember, the PrizePicks does not give you a bonus for going over 100 yards. So you lose that 3-point bonus. But that might be enough of a gap. You're talking almost 3-point difference in terms of fantasy score for me to take a risk, take a chance here on Jalen Waddle going over 12 fantasy points. All right, back to chat. What do we got here? DeAndre Swift season. Let's see. He's explaining why he likes Robbie Anderson. Terrace Marshall is out, and Robbie does average around 7 to 8 targets. So I'm hoping for a touchdown. Well, yeah, if he snags a TD, man, lock it up. Lock the over in for Robbie Anderson. Good to know. No Marshall for the Carolina Panthers. What else we got, chat? Josh Jacobs over 0.5 touchdowns. I think that is a very good one. I actually had him locked in as well for that over. Josh Jacobs, according to my notes here, I put together spreadsheets from time to time for Patreon members. So if you're not a member of Patreon and you want to be a part of a community where we talk all things PrizePicks, not just NFL, not just NBA. I mean, we got guys in there doing League of Legends, CSGO, MLB, NHL. I mean, we're covering everything. But if you want to be a part of a group, I have a group. Plus, your contribution on Patreon. Helps me out as a content creator, allows me to keep doing these live streams, putting out videos for you guys. All this stuff's free. I don't get like paid by YouTube or anything to do these videos. So if you want to be a part of Patreon, man, definitely check it out. There's a link down in the description of this video. You could join Patreon and we can mix it up there and talk more in the Discord chat. But Josh Jacobs, on the spreadsheet that I put together, he was one that I liked for an over. He was projected on the blitz for 0.82 anytime touchdowns. So anytime touchdowns, meaning can be a receiving touchdown, can be a rushing touchdown. I probably expect it to be a rushing touchdown if that helps you out. So Josh Jacobs over that 0.5 touchdown number. I do like that one. What else we got here, chat? Chad with the Jared Goff lock. He says he locked in Jared Goff under 268.5 passing yards on BetMGM, but the lines have now dipped to 263.5. Well, that's probably a good thing for you, Chad. If you locked it in at 268.5 under, and now the lines have moved down to 263.5, then you must have been ahead of the curve, ahead of the game, locking in that Jared Goff number. I will give you, just as a little bit of an insight here on Jared Goff and his passing yards today, his projected passing yards according to the blitz. And we'll see if that makes you feel any better or worse about locking in what you locked in. But I think you're sitting pretty nice with that 268. He's projected for 276 passing yards. So it's going to be a nail biter. Sounds like it's going to be a nail biter. Rams, definitely a tough defense, though. So I could see them giving Jared Goff many problems. It's a revenge game for both guys, right? Matt Stafford and Jared Goff. Should be interesting to see how that game plays out. Dre Day says he has Josh Jacobs over 0.5 touchdowns. Love it. Jalen Waddle over 65 yards. Without Devonte Parker, that's a good way to go. Lamar Jackson over 0.5 touchdowns. Is that rushing touchdowns? It's got to be rushing touchdowns, right? Lamar Jackson, hit or miss. I mean, that's, not a terrible prop, but I probably wouldn't go there. I love the Daryl Williams over 0.5 anytime touchdowns. That is actually the highest projected anytime touchdown is Daryl Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs. Thank you for pointing that out, Dre Day. I've got Daryl Williams, according to the blitz, projected for 1 touchdown. So that can be a rushing or receiving touchdown. 1 touchdown on a projection of 0.5 touchdowns for Daryl Williams today. He is the guy that the blitz likes to score a touchdown more than anybody else. So there you have it. Love that play as well. Devonte Booker yards projection. Rushing yards, I assume. I assume we're talking rushing yards for Devonte Booker. Let's go take a look. A single stat. We've got just under 50 minutes. Just under 50 minutes before things get started here. So I'll be jumping off here before too long and going to lock in some last minute entries. You guys have dropped some absolute gems in the chat. Appreciate that. Add super chat so we can start paying you. Dre, listen, the biggest thing that you could do for me, man, and if you want to be a part of a community and a group, hit me on Patreon, man. That would be the biggest thank you could give me, brother. If you win any kind of money or anything through what I'm doing for you here on YouTube, what I'm doing for you on this live stream, go down in the link below. We got about 100 or more people that are patrons, and that would be the biggest thank you could give me. And I'm going to give back to you. I put out spreadsheets. We drop picks. We share information all day long in there. So if you want to be a part of a group, man, that would be the biggest thank you. But super chat could be a thing. Super chat could definitely be a thing if I keep doing these live streams. What do you think about these live streams, by the way? Leave a comment in the chat. Are you liking the live streams? Would you like to see more interactive stuff like this instead of the just normal video posts that I do? Would you like more of these types of little interactions where I answer your questions and dig into some player prop research before NFL lock? So if you like this kind of stuff, I could do more of it for you. You got to let me know though, man. I need to know what you people want. Let me know what you want, what you like. All right, brother. I appreciate you, man. Dre, We got a good group in there, man. Check out the Winner's Circle channel in the Discord community. You'll see what I'm talking about. There's people in there winning hundreds, thousands of dollars day in, day out on different sports. So appreciate you joining that. Devonte Booker, we were waiting on confirmation. Devonte Booker yards. I think he was talking rushing yards. Let's look at Devonte Booker's rushing yards real quick. According to the Blitz, we will see how they've got Devonte Booker stacked up here. Of course, Devonte Booker, now the starting running back for the New York Giants. Obviously, Saquon Barkley can't seem to stay healthy, unfortunately for him. You hate to see it with such a talented player like Saquon, but he has been beat up this season and last season and for a couple of seasons now. So Devonte Booker, though, if you're looking at his rushing yards, he's projected for 69 rushing yards, almost 70 rushing yards. That is a big edge versus where he's at on PrizePicks right now at 50.5. Now, according to the game logs, last two games, 42 and 41, hasn't really come close to 50, hasn't come anywhere close to 69 or 70 rushing yards, but there you go. Devonte Booker, man, looking like a good overplay according to the Blitz in terms of his projected rushing yards. Derrick Henry under 3 receptions lock. Yeah, if I was playing Derrick Henry, I'd probably lean toward the under, and I think worst case scenario, maybe it turns into a push situation. Maybe it turns into a push. Chad says, I wish PrizePicks was available in Colorado. Chad, check out PrizePicks website. Not the app, but the website. I've had somebody tell me that the app doesn't work for whatever reason, but they were able to go on their computer, if you have a computer, and go to prizepicks.com and see if it works through the web browser. Just a tip. I don't know. What else we got here? Underdog Fantasy just dropped Colorado a few weeks ago. Dropped as in doesn't support, or dropped as in you can play underdog? I don't know. I'm a PrizePicks guy through and through, in case you haven't noticed. So, I'm loyal. I'm loyal to PrizePicks until the bigger bag comes around. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? Panthers are bottom 3 in the past 3 games in rush defense. His fantasy point prop is probably better going on the over for the rush. Let's get it. Thanks a lot. Hey, thank you, DeAndre, for dropping in, brother. I appreciate you. Oh, yeah. Hey, Chad, those Packers uniforms today, fire. I agree with you 100%. Big Jake, love Chris Godwin over receiving yards today. No Antonio Brown. In case you missed out on the news somehow, Antonio Brown not going to play today. Obviously, no Rob Gronkowski still for the Tampa Bay Bucks. That means a lot of love, probably for Chris Godwin, probably for Mike Evans. And I noticed PrizePicks, for whatever reason, this was weird. Normally they're on top of their game. Normally they're there, cranking the knobs up or cranking them down on these player props. But for whatever reason, last time I checked, they finally did bump him up. Son of a. He was at 60.5 receiving yards for a very long time. Here's who they did not bump up, though. They must have got a lot of action on Chris Godwin. They did not bump up Mike Evans. Mike Evans, to my knowledge, has been at 62.5 receiving yards all week long, all day long. So if you're feeling a little gun shy on Chris Godwin going over on his receiving yards, pivot to Mike Evans, man, at 62.5. Look at it. I'm just going to say, look at it. 75, 106, 75, 113. He's 4 for 5. 4 for 5 covering 62.5 receiving yards so far this season. That is a fantastic pivot, in my opinion. Just my opinion. And I think he's projected, according to the Blitz, to go over 62.5. You're doing something, because people are becoming more efficient as PrizePicks hustling, and you almost can have production on these lives, bro. Yeah. Okay. I think I know what you're saying. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. Chad, you've been using Thrive Fantasy and BetMGM. Careful with Thrive, because I heard some things. I don't know. Maybe they were just going through a rough patch with paying people out, but I've heard some things with Thrive in the past as far as getting people their money. And if you're like me, I don't like people playing with my money. Mike Evans is getting shadowed by Johnson, who's been a lockdown cornerback so far this year. So you think they're going to be shadowing Big Mike? Could be. That could be a thing. A 5 power play? Well, they don't do 5 power plays. They do 5 pick flex play. But I'll recap for you guys, and then I'll get out of here because, I don't have any entries in yet, man. I got to get going. Some of the ones that we talked about, in case you are just now popping into the chat, we talked about both quarterbacks from the Carolina New York Giants game. Both of them looking like pretty good options in terms of going over. Daniel Jones, probably the stronger option of the two, has the higher hit rate so far this season, going over 233.5 passing yards. You could see there's only one game in which he did not go over, and that was the game against Dallas, where I believe he got knocked out with a concussion. Otherwise, he has hit this prop in 4 out of 4. So that was one option that we looked at. Rushing yards, we did discuss Joe Mixon, liking some Joe Mixon at 60.5. He's done a pretty good job of covering this prop. 4 games this season in which he has covered. The only game that he didn't was against Green Bay with 33. I think we talked about some touchdown props that we really like. Darrell Williams, anytime touchdowns. Probably my favorite. If you don't want to go with him, you can go Josh Jacobs over 0.5 touchdowns. These can come through the air as a receiving touchdown. They could come on the ground as a rushing touchdown. So you have options with those particular props. But those were a few that we looked at. We talked about receiving yards. I just mentioned Mike Evans being an option. Of course, you can't really go wrong with Cooper Kupp. He's been an absolute stud. Someone in chat named Jalen Waddle as a good option. I do expect Miami to be passing the ball a lot, probably trailing to Atlanta in this game. Jalen Waddle, though, could be a good option to go over. I'm a big Mike Gesicki fan. He's been absolutely killing it with no Devontae Parker today. I expect Waddle and Gesicki to probably be the two guys that are most likely to step up. DJ Moore, man, if I like Sam Darnold to go over his passing yards prop, then I like a lot of those passing yards to probably go to DJ Moore. I don't have to say a whole lot here, but over, and almost over. So you could see he's gone over in like 3, almost 4 out of the 5 games that they've played. Yes, Darnold's been struggling, but the Giants suck. So DJ Moore could be an option. Keep an eye on Darren Waller. He's kind of going to be a game time decision, it sounded like. You might want to fade him. If he's out, go to Hunter Renfrow. He's been Mr. Consistent. Henry Ruggs, one bomb against the Philadelphia Eagles. He could definitely go over. He's a deep threat. Cooper Kupp at 91.5, man, just seems way too low. Over. Missed it here, but then goes over. So 4 out of 5 games, he's gone over. That feels like pretty safe money with Cooper Kupp going over receiving yards. So, I mean, there's like, I don't know how many picks I just give you, but if you want to, put all those in a 5-pick play and drop, some money on it, there you go. You could go for 10x. Yeah, 62.5 is still low for Mike Evans. I agree. With no Gronk, with no Antonio Brown in the lineup, man, just on volume alone, I expect him to get targeted 8, maybe 10 times. I mean, they got to throw the ball to somebody, and who better than number 13, Big Mike Evans. What are your top 2 props? Whew. Nathan, you little Raiders over Eagles. Okay. You're probably right. I mean, they probably will. Top 2 props. I mean, that Darrell Williams over touchdowns, man. I got to really, I feel good about that. Like I said, he's projected to go for 1 touchdown today, and that can be receiving or rushing. You can see he's done a pretty decent job. He had 2 touchdowns against Washington last week, so. We will wrap this stream up here at 12:30. So we got about 9 more minutes. So if you have any last minute questions, man, shoot your shot. Let's get them in. You guys have dropped some fantastic plays today, though. Love it. Oh, I love you too, Nate Dogg. I love you too, brother. Thank you for that. I hope the Eagles shake up the world and beat your Raiders today. I do. Appreciate you guys popping in, man. Chat has been lit. I love it. Love it. And if you have any friends, family who play fantasy sports or anything like that, share my channel with them, man. I'm looking to build some more subscribers. We have surpassed 1,700 recently, but that's not good enough. We're trying to go up and up and up. Appreciate you guys. Goat, what's up, Goat? Haven't talked to you in a minute. Calvin Ridley over receiving yards is a lock, a triple lock. So many locks. I don't believe in locks, but let's go look at Calvin Ridley real quick. Goat saying this is a lock on lock on lock. Of course, Calvin Ridley been in and out of the lineup so far, but through 4 games, he has only covered this prop once. That was against Washington back on October 3rd. Then he missed, 1, 2 games, something like that. Let's go back over to props.cash real quick. We'll take a look at Calvin Ridley. Atlanta taking on Miami today. A lot of people are loving the Atlanta passing attack today. I think that makes a lot of sense, too. I mean, how could you not? Calvin Ridley is not on props.cash for whatever reason. Okay, well, that's weird. But let's go ahead and go to Pro Football Reference, and we will go toggle per game stats. They're taking on Miami. Let's look at how many receiving yards per game that Miami allows to opposing wideouts. And you could see 210 receiving yards. That is the 3rd most in the entire NFL through 6 games. So you can see why people love Matt Ryan today. They love Calvin Ridley today. They love Cordarrelle Patterson today. I think Kyle Pitts, I had him, or I didn't have him, but the Blitz had him projected to go under 51.5 receiving yards. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, Calvin Ridley looking decent, especially considering the matchup. Let's look at his projection real quick according to the Blitz. Give you a little bit more information on that Calvin Ridley receiving yard prop, that triple lock that Goat just dropped in the chat. Lock on lock on lock. Let's see how many receiving yards Calvin Ridley's projected for today. He is projected for 82 receiving yards, so that would put him over 76.5. Did I talk about Henderson? Talking about Daryl Henderson? I like Daryl Henderson today. I do like some Daryl Henderson today. Let's see where his his rushing yard prop is. He's actually been crushing his receiving yard prop. I don't know what it's at today, but if you don't like the rushing yards for Henderson, you could absolutely go receiving yards. He's been doing a great job of covering that prop. So on 80.5 rushing yards, he has covered this in just 2 games. Came awfully close against the Giants last week, finishing with 78 rushing yards, but he's the man in terms of running the football. So not mad at Daryl Henderson at 80.5 rushing yards if you want to go over. Over. That's right. Nothing is a lock, brother. Nothing is a lock. You are right about that, Heart of Packs. No locks. The only time it's a lock is when it actually hits and the game's over. Even last night, I don't know if you guys were tuned into what happened with the NBA prop. I think there was a Frank Jackson prop that got posted on PrizePicks. 1.5 real life points. The guy scored 5 points and went over his 1.5 point prop. The game ended. People were paid out on PrizePicks. And then they did a DNP on Frank Jackson and upset a lot of people. So it's never a lock, even whenever the game's over and you think that your prop has hit, it's still not a lock. But Goat, man, I trust Goat. Goat's a sharp dude. He's a sharp guy. If Goat's calling lock on that Calvin Ridley prop, then, hey, man, maybe Goat's right. Maybe Goat's got something there. Gotta love that matchup against Miami, though. Got about 4 or 5 more minutes, guys. If you want to drop any other props that you're liking, do it now. Do it now. Fantasy points, single stat player props. Get them in. Get them in. Got a few more minutes to go. We had a lot of nice little nuggets dropped in here. Whew. That's a bad beat on Jeremy Grant fantasy points. Yikes. Yeah, so talked about some Aaron Jones rushing yards, potentially an extreme run game script here for the Green Bay Packers against Washington. That could be another way to go. Derrick Henry under rushing yards. Derrick Henry under rushing yards. Well, he's at 120.5 now. If I'm not mistaken, this number was quite a bit lower not that long ago. What was it, yesterday? They bumped him up. Yeah, he was at 116.5. He was at 116.5 as of last night when I put this spreadsheet out and posted it to Patreon for my patrons out there who support my work. He was at 116.5 rushing yards. So he has been bumped up 4 additional rushing yards. Now, according to the Blitz, as of last night, he was projected for 119 rushing yards, which would have put him over his previous prop of 116.5. But now that he's 120.5, it's a fade for me, bruh. It's a fade. I'm fading it. Can't go there now. Too close. Too close for comfort. Yep. I think the Waddle receiving yards, I think you're talking receiving yards. Maybe you're talking receptions. I think Waddle makes a lot of sense. If you think Atlanta gets out to a lead, forces Miami into a pass-heavy game script, which is very, very possible, then some of these Miami guys, such as Waddle and Gesicki, with no Devonte Parker in the lineup, they could eat. They could definitely eat. All right, guys, it is 12:29. I'm going to wrap this up. Chat's starting to slow down. Hopefully you guys are out there making your last minute entries before kickoff at 1 p.m. here on the East Coast. I'm here in Tampa. Appreciate you guys tuning in though. I'm going to try and do more of these live streams. If you guys like them, drop a like on this video if you like these live streams. If you find them helpful, informative, if they're providing value to you, drop a like. I appreciate all the likes. And I will catch you in the next one, man. We'll